Okay, so let's get started. Let me share my screen. There, share. I'm on a slideshow. Let's go here. How's that? Whoa, look at that big screen. So last week, folks, this week we're going to talk about pruning. I think we're going to skip the IPM stuff. You guys sent me your homework. And, you know, it's pretty clear that you guys were able to make use of that IPM website. So if you didn't, you know it's there and you're able to make use of it. Yeah. Unless you found something that says discuss discrepancies. So unless it was something that you thought it was, and then you went to the IPM and found out it was something else, or vice versa. Anybody have that experience? You can feel free to speak up. Brenda's here. Before we start, Brenda, would you like to do a land acknowledgement for us?
Sure. Theodore Payne is on Tatavian land, place of thorns, Wikanvitam. Wikagna is the place of thorns. We acknowledge our neighbors in all directions. The Tataviam, the Shumash, the Serrano, the Liseño, the Kitanamuk, and the Tomba Gabrielino Kish nations. And we value their traditional ecological knowledge. Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Yes, and you can also find out what lands you're on, and that is native lands. Brenda, do you know the exact website again?
I'll post it in the chat.
Okay, yeah, it's worth looking at. Okay, somebody has a loud microphone.
Maybe
it's Brenda with the loud.
And if at any point, if anybody sees Pauline, I need Pauline.
Okay, so here we go. Objectives of this session. To be able to identify 3 reasons to prune along with appropriate techniques to achieve the desired effect. I need to close the chat. Identify proper techniques and seasons for pruning ceanothus, manzanitas, and sages. Identify the basics of proper tool hygiene. And I would say also learning how to find the answers for yourself. That's almost more important than all of this other stuff. These things you can pick up, but also sometimes we forget. So remember to find out where those answers are. And one of the answers is in your workbook. We have a whole kind of an encyclopedia of the various plants, ways to prune them, what they will handle, all of that stuff, and we'll go over that later. The other thing, so one thing I'd like to add is that remember we were talking about those main genuses from the beginning of the class. I think it was the plant ID class. Those genuses have consistencies that run through them, even though they have different species in the genuses. And quite often you can use the genus as your guide about how to prune those plants. That can be a place to start. So once you learn like Baccharis, you have a really good head start about how to prune this plant when it's time to do it. And same thing with Arctostophilus, Manzanita, Ceanothus. So you can go back to those main genuses and start to quiz yourself. And you can use those flashcards as a way to kind of quiz yourself for a while. So like my kids will do that to me. Like we're driving in the car, we're bored, we're at a restaurant, whatever. We bring the flashcards. My daughter likes to quiz me because, it's kind of fun to be in control and see if dad knows what he's talking about, So, and it's great for me because it really puts me on the spot. So that's just a thought. Let's see. Okay, I clicked. I'm going to wait. There it is, reasons to prune. So we have objectives, and the important one of the you need a reason to prune. It's not just getting out there in the garden, right? And sometimes it's good to put that in mind when you're doing it. So it's rejuvenation. So am I trying to refresh this plant? Am I trying to stimulate new growth? Remove unproductive woody growth. That kind of gets into plant health. Let's talk about aesthetics, shaping. So removing dead, diseased, or faded parts to direct growth in the way that you want it to go, including shaping a hedge or small tree or exposing attractive features. This would also might be deadheading as part of aesthetics. Plant health, remove dead, diseased, damaged vegetation first. So in the case of a tree, they talk, and most woody shrubs, you talk about the 4 Ds. Some people could say 3. Now I'm hearing 4. Dead, damaged, diseased, and deranged. So you can get a good start removing the dead stuff first, then the damaged or broken limbs, diseased, obviously. So if you've got a diseased plant or a diseased limb and everything else looks fine, cut the diseased off, similar to like some of those IPM practices we were talking about. And then deranged are like the crossing branches, right? And most of these pruning things that we're going to talk about here, this is all pretty standard stuff. Western Garden, Western Sunset book, so if you don't, memorize everything, you can always refer to those many references on these things. And then lastly, maybe it's just, this kind of keep branches out and debris out of the path, right? So people can walk by. You don't have to duck underneath this limb unless you like it, but let's say you're working in a public space, you got to keep those trees limbed up enough so people can walk on the paths. So also, it's good to keep in mind what the goal of the garden is. Is it a habitat garden? What is it? Is it a showy garden? What is your client? Of course, what is your client's going to tell you? What they like, what they don't like, or you're going to ask them. But you're going to keep those things in mind. And then also, before you cut, of course, you're identifying the plant, and hopefully you understand what you're trying to achieve with this plant, and you understand the characteristics of the plant before you start packing things back. Okay, ways to prune. Deadheading. So many of us are familiar with that. removal of individual spent flowers or flower clusters entirely before seeds mature. Can prolong the flowering season of annuals and non-woody perennials, or give a plant a more tidy appearance. Yeah, so that's up to your client. Here we have a Blisianum, Eriogonum blisianum. That's a hybrid buckwheat. You can see all the dead material on the left, the spent flowers hanging down. So when you cut those back, you're gonna take those all the way back into the shrub, and this would be less of a shearing and more of an individual cutting with your bypass pruners. And get in there, hide your cuts, don't leave a lot of sticks showing, and that's the aesthetics part. And of course, you can also see some green because all the flowers didn't show up at the same time, or maybe the new growth was showing up and the old growth was still on there. So that was time to deadhead at that point, clean up the plant. You can see the new growth up on top on the right. And then, you know, we leave these seeds around a long time at Theodore Payne, because one, we collect seeds over there, although collecting seeds off of Blisianum is not really useful. And then we like the habitat. We like providing the material for habitat. And, you know, it gives you two colors on a plant. Think about it, you know, and then you get to watch these flowers change over the season. Here's a whirly blue. Deadheading. Yeah, we've seen this a lot. Salvias with dead flowers, and you know, this is it looks like they went in fairly precisely. They didn't just shear the plant back, they went in pretty much and cut back off all the dead material. And here we have a refreshed one on the right. Here it is. If you can, leave seed heads on as long as possible. It's great bird food. And Celia farinosa, in need of some deadheading or not. It's all about the desire for habitat and client preferences, like I was saying. So you can deadhead this, and actually this plant also will take a coppicing once in a while. Every couple of years, you get this thing gets overgrown and cut it back down to the ground. It'll grow from the base. Okay, next, mowing. So this looks like red fescue or something. Mowing, use of a lawnmower to cut down plants, mostly grasses, can be done on epilobium and achillea in late season. Creates a manicured appearance and makes lawn more usable. Yeah, so just running down really quickly. So you're going to cut your grasses probably before they're about to go into season. So on your cool season grasses, your elamus, fescue, caryxes, those you're going to cut like about now, because we're going into the cool season. And there's various methods. Yes, you could drive a lawnmower over this thing. You'd want to set it very high because they're actually a bunch of clumps. So you can do that. I used to work at a place with a lot of carex, just a huge field of carex, and they drive one of those big old big machines like that you would cut a baseball field with over it and clean it up. And so you set it really high. Of course, it makes a huge mess, and it's a lot of raking afterwards. Then your warm season grasses, deer grass, sporobolus, aristida, budalua, those are going to be cut more as the weather starts warming up, heading into the 80 degrees on a consistent basis. And you trim those. And you could cut them in the winter, but then you're just looking at stumps. It's your choice. You know, personally, I like to still watch the grass kind of flow around a little bit. Okay, so mowing epilobium and perennial herbs and rhizomatous shrubs, rhizomatous, rhizomatous shrubs are invigorated by mowing or coppicing. It will cause them to spread. Yeah. This is an example. You don't have to use a mower. You can use a string trimmer. We string trim these usually in the after flowering. After flowering, you're going to hear that a lot today. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Here's some elaemus. This not only needs a cutback, but I can tell you from experience, this very patch is getting chewed up by gophers. So I can't tell I don't know how this is going to go this year, but yeah, cut it back right about now. And then wait for the refresh. Grasses can be mowed regularly if using as a lawn substitute. So you again, you can cut depending on the grass you're using, once a month or so, if you really feel like it needs it. Cool season grass, if you're using it as more of a walking through rather than a visual. Cool season grass get cut in the fall, warm season grass get cut later, winter or spring. And then also you might take your cue from what it looks like before. Yes, it'll probably refresh, but you can also replant, add more that is missing. Maybe you've lost a few plants over the course of the season. Edging, here's the next thing. So this is Pigeon Point. If you've been to Theodore Payne, I'm sure you've seen this area. It's over by the education building. It's on the big roundabout up above. You can see the Pigeon Point creeping onto the driveway. And to us, that is fine. And it's this time of year, it's stretched out a little far. And so hopefully we can get you guys to help us cut this back a little bit, get a little practice. It's all about hiding the cuts on these. If you edge it hard, yes, you can edge it hard right along the edge with the edger string trimmer, although it's pretty tough. You need some pretty tough twine. But what you may do is expose a lot of dead material if you edge it back. And then you're also going to create this stiff line, which is up, that's a person's aesthetic. You're going to create a stiff line. Can you see my hand? Stiff line, dead material with a little green stuff up here. And most people don't want that. So you have to reach back into the plant, cut the stems, it's like there are layers. So you're going to cut back. It's actually like this. You're going to reach in here and cut these back, and it's going to fold like that. And then it will be up in the air and you will see a little dead stuff, but gradually it'll sink down again. So it gives a nice, more natural look. Here's some Yankee Point. Again, you got to be, that's another instance where if you can, yes, you could edge it. And yeah, Yankee Point will build up a little wall there, but you would have to decide how much of a cliff you want to make on that, or do you want to come in and do the selective pruning to give a little more of a natural look on the edge. Okay, waiting. Never fails. Okay, thinning and lifting. Okay, so one is, so thinning is a process of sort of clearing out a shrub, removing entire stems and branches, often done to create architectural look on manzanita. Opens up structure for air circulation, creates a desired shape, removes dead material for aesthetic and fire safety, or removes cross branches. So you're using those quadruple D method to guide your thinning. And let's see, I wish they had the picture of the multiple, a plant with a lot of branches, and then you're thinning, but you're cutting all the way back here. You're not trimming up here. We'll talk about that later. So you're thinning out so you have fewer branches. Okay, that's what thinning is. You're going all the way back into the trunk and you're clearing out, and this gives more air for these branches to breathe and opens up the structure. Here we are. This talks about proper technique. So cutting smaller branches, you can cut those pretty close. Here's the branch collar, and that's less of an issue on smaller branches. You can cut those very close. You can see this one here next to the trunk. But when you're cutting a larger branch, and you can see this branch collar here, this folded over bark ridge right here, you're going to cut outside of the branch collar, and you're going to cut perpendicular to the branch. So it's like a 90-degree cut on the branch. You can see that the way the line is it's not straight. So the main trunk is up and down, and the cut you're making is perpendicular to the branch. That's very important. And you cut outside of the branch collar, so the branch collar can grow over that and help seal the wound. Okay. If you have a large branch, use this 3-cut method. Your first cut is here, and it's halfway through the branch, and you're doing it from underneath. So many of us have had that experience where we cut a branch and then the weight of it pulls down and you pull a strip off the tree. This is how you avoid that. So here's your first cut, and then as you're cutting here and the weight comes, the peeling stops here before you hit the trunk. And then of course, depending on how big the branch is, you might relieve weight as you go down the branch. So you're not cutting this giant, really heavy branch off. You're cutting successively down towards that cut. Then you make the second cut. So your first cut is the half cut underneath. Second cut, you take the majority of the branch off. Third cut is this one outside of the branch collar. That's all really standard approach to pruning. And, there was a long time I couldn't remember. Where was the first cut, the second cut, the third cut? I just couldn't remember. So I don't have a handy slick saying or anything, but maybe I'll develop one as I go along here. You can always look it up. Thinning and lifting. This is kind of this is a dead branch on this Gambellia, and it's just, you're just going deep down into the plant itself to cut the end of it off and get the whole branch out of there. You're not leaving any stumps or sticks showing. Here's a Melasma laurina, the laurel sumac. In here, on the left hand photo, we have a small yucca, but you can't see it because the melasma is jutting out and eating it. So you go in, and on the right, you can see it's a little more open. You can actually see this yucca, And you can see that they've cut back. They haven't left any stumps sticking out. They've gone all the way back to the base of the shrub and cut these long branches jutting out back. Similarly, so can you guys see my mouse when I'm circling here? This. So let's say you wanted to cut this back. You have some choices, but really if you were applying the thinning technique, you would cut from here. You'd cut way down in here to remove this branch. Let's say you wanted to reduce the height. Whoops. So you wanted to reduce the height. You can see the general outline of this shrub, but you wanted to take all of these back. Now you could reduce these down and hide your cut in here, but also you can thin out the tree or the shrub if you wanted to give a little more air and cut it way down here at the base. Okay, so you have a couple choices.
So when pruning for fire safety, the distance between like both shrubs and the trees, is that why the thinning would be more important in this case, I guess? You know, like you have the—
Yeah, you definitely want it. That is a whole study. And yeah, you want to, I don't know what the technical distance between, but you don't want large shrubs touching each other.
Yeah, I know you said they were ember catchers, so I don't know if—
Yeah, you
Okay.
don't want them touching each other, because if one does go up, you just want that thing to burn on its own. You don't want it
Gotcha.
to touch another. And then you need to get those limbs up off the ground. I think it's quite high. So it's if the grass is burning, let's say you have a grass or something underneath and that's burning, you don't want the limbs of the tree hanging down toward, I never know how much you guys can see. You don't want the limbs of the tree hanging down so low that when the grass burns, it catches the tree on fire. You're trying to just stop fires from moving from one thing to the next.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Bending and lifting. This is kind of hard to tell, but this is a Sambucus in our demonstration garden. If you're walking on this path, you would have had to duck, do a lot of ducking. You can see there's a lot of stuff here. And so this is a multi-trunk Sambucus, and it has this kind of arching quality that we have tried to encourage over the path, but just sometimes the weight down here is going to carry the branch down. So sometimes you can relieve that by trimming this area here and relieving the weight of the branch, and the branch will lift up depending on how much it's carrying. And then sometimes you just have to go all the way back. Sometimes you go back to the base. It's hard to tell what exactly they did here to relieve this issue. But you either go back to the base or you go back to a branch, and we'll get on this. We'll be talking about this, to a branch that's 1/3 the size of the one you're cutting. And we'll talk about why that we do that. Pinching. This is another pruning technique. This removal of only of the tips of the stems when new growth is coming on right after flowering, encourage fuller growth. So this is used often with salvias and plants that you want to sort of ball up. And you go back to a node, you choose a node, depending on how far back you want to go. And you clip here, maybe not right where his finger is, I'm assuming him, but they say like 1/4 of an inch from that node. Then you're not going to have this dead stick sticking out. And then you'll get a branching off here of this salvia, and it will create a more dense canopy for the salvia. you can even do that right at the very tip. Sometimes if you get a really young one, you can just pinch that little right at the head of it. You can pinch it out and get more growth going that way. This is typically done on young plants. All right. See if I missed anything. Oh yeah, so sometimes you get a nursery plant. It's one stalk like this. You can start to encourage that growth by pinching it. And now you'll have two, and then you start to encourage the growth like that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, just to be clear, this pair of leaves here is called a node. It's a growth point. Pinching, okay. Reduction cuts or heading back. Cutting a terminal leader, branch, or stem back to a lateral one that is typically 1/3 the size, the 1/3 the size of the branch you are cutting or more. So in this case, avoid cutting larger branches without a sufficiently sized lateral to absorb the regrowth, or you can get a water sprout effect. True. So prunus, here's your prunus ilicifolia, and I guess you can see up here, it was kind of like what I was pointing out with the melasma. This is growing outside of the boundary. They don't really want to encourage this. They want a tighter look on this shrub. So this, they took back to a point where there was a lateral that could accept the growth. It's, again, I think pens on this would help for us to know exactly what we're looking at, but it looks like they took this section back and they took this back. And what they didn't do was just cut it right here where the where they saw the edge of the a shrub, or the outline of the shrub being. They didn't just cut it with nothing to absorb the growth. They didn't just cut it. It leaves, one, it gives you these kind of stumps, and then two, there's nothing. I don't know if you would get water sprouts on this because it's such a small branch, but with a bigger branch, if there isn't the 1/3 size lateral, this will, or if the twig is too small, you'll create a water sprout effect, and those are very weak branches. They just can't absorb all the growth that's going on that branch. They don't have enough whatever material to absorb the hormones that are located in there. So I'm sure that was totally unclear. Is there any question? Does anybody have any question about what I was trying to say there?
Does the water sprout effect, does it eventually kill the plant, or can it make
No.
it too weak?
No, it makes it unattractive. So I don't know if they have, I'm going to bounce through here really quick and see. Okay, I'm going to tell you about water sprouts just 1 second, but I think this is a close-up of our prunus. Here's some laterals. And then also, I think there are something going on here that allows this to be cut there. I think you see this leaf here. I think there's also a small lateral there as well. Close up of the cuts, you can see the next stems are about 1/3 the size of the branch we cut. See, now I'd be more likely to cut that lower. So it's interesting that people have different styles, you know. If that's my lateral, I'm more likely to cut there, but I think they did that because there's pair of leaves here. These laterals can absorb the growth and it kind of still maintains the shape of the tree. Otherwise, you've got kind of a funny dip in it, perhaps. Okay, yeah, water sprouts. If you've seen the city go when you have, let's say, a power line issue, your tree is heading right into the power line underneath, and they just cut that, they just cut the head off of that tree. What's going to happen is that encourages all that water sprout growth up there. You see this a lot also when people, like, boy, they really do it along La Tuna. People have these eucalyptus and they just look like, you know, they just cut off their arm and it's just sticking out like this. We've all seen that. Well, this is where all these water sprouts are going to come out. It's going to come out, and yeah, eventually it kind of looks like a tree, but you can tell it's just not healthy for it. There is a technique called pollarding, but pollarding is usually done starting much younger with a tree. This is when they're cutting off the limbs. That's more like this has to be done. This is an afterthought thing. And you'll see those water sprouts going on there. Let's move to coppicing. So coppicing is cutting back of woody shrubs to the ground or to within 6 inches of the ground. Yeah, you can reinvigorate. So remember, we were talking about renewal. Was that the term we used? But refreshing, reasons to prune, right? I'm trying to remember the term we used, rejuvenation. So this is a Leucophylla point sal, I believe. This thing was about 3 or 4 feet high, all along here, running right into this yucca back here. Actually, I believe it's a Nolina, but and they stumped it to the ground. And I think I might have mentioned this. So I was shocked, and the thing came back. And when you come in on Saturday for pruning class, we can look at it and you can see the sprouts coming back. And this thing looks great now. It looks really happy. So you can do that. It's not a thing you're going to do every year. You know, it's every 5 to 7 years or so. And it's hard to know which plants you can do that on. You start to develop your knowledge of the plants you can do that on. And then sometimes plants will also surprise you with their ability to return after they've been, sometimes you're trying to cut this thing down and it comes back. You know, sometimes you're trying to get rid of this plant and it shows up. And then a lot of times one indicator is the growth from the base of the plant. When you see that, you can be pretty confident that you can coppice that woody shrub. Yeah, so this is also Baccharis, I believe, pigeon point, small pigeon point. Both of these plants look great right now. We did that up and down the road, actually. We cut back Eriogonum cinereum, which is an ashy leaf buckwheat, and you'd be surprised how big that plant got in one season. So please come in, and if you can't make it to the pruning workshop, I'll point it out to you when you come in. Shearing, so this is like for shrubs and things, for hedges, excuse me. Pruning for a formal hedge. To create a visual or physical barrier, hedges must be wider at the bottom than top for light to reach all parts of the plant. Use sharp shears. Take care to avoid creating dead spaces in the middle of densely sheared plants. Yeah, So, and then also you want to know if this is a plant that flowers or creates fruit that you want to keep, like the berberis creates beautiful flowers and fruit. So you're going to want to pay attention to its season. So unless that is not something that's desired. What is, oh, okay. You know, some people just don't care. They just want their hedge to look good all the time. And that's fine too, you know. I can really appreciate a beautifully manicured hedge. And then sharp shears, important. Sometimes if you use electric shears, you can kind of beat up the leaves and they'll get a kind of thrashed look. So beware. You can try it out, but the plant may not respond well. And then you have to be careful about how deep you go, right? Because if you create bare spots, it might have trouble recovering. Okay. Shearing essentially, sorry, is the use of hundreds of reduction. Okay, I'm trying to move this thing so I can read. There we go. Essentially, the use of hundreds of reduction cuts along the canopy to create a dense hedge. Here you can see the bud response on the reduction cut on lemonade berry. So yeah, so this is, it doesn't really look like a hedge to me, but it does look like a good example of the regrowth after the reduction cut. So that would be a reduction cut, whereas the thinning, you would take this deeper into the plant. Shearing. Okay, so it's surprising what you can use for hedges and shearing. So we got a Dana point over here on the right. Somebody found this in an alley and they just started, I guess these guys put in this Dana point buckwheat and they needed to get out of the way of the traffic and they started shearing it. And so they have this interesting, strange little hedge that they created. And then over here, as we see, it says a 75-year-old lemonade berry hedge at Santa Barbara Botanical Garden. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I feel like I want to hang out with that guy who's taking care of that lemonade berry hedge and get a few pointers, you know? Oh, espaliering. Okay, training of a plant along a wall or fence to create a focal point or fit plants into narrow spaces. Yes. Species to attempt include flannel bush, California lilac, so that's ceanothus, redbud, manzanita. You can also try, I've seen it with toyon. Trying to see. Oh, grapes, of course. So grapes are great along fences. I'm surprised, like this Fremontodendron. I don't know how much work it would take to keep that in that narrow space, but that's a plant I don't want to play around with. Fremontodendrons are known to have a lot of hairy, nasty stuff, skin irritating material on them. So you're going to want to wear a, they suggest that you do this at the last part of the day so you can wash up really quickly afterwards. You can also wear like a Tyvek suit and just take it all off at the end. So yeah, espaliering. Season, what time do we have here? 5:46. Let's take a short break. Let's take 5 minutes. Been talking a lot. And you guys have been listening. So 5 minutes and then I'll be back. If you have any questions, now's a good time. Oh, there's a lot of chat going on.
There's chat going on. I posted the link to Eventbrite. We had a few spaces open up. So one of the classes I think had 10. Now it's got one space open. The afternoon class has 2 spaces open. So if you haven't already signed up, the link is in the chat.
As far as the Joyce Coulter, challenging depending on what you're trying to achieve. You don't want to make big cut. Is Nathaniel here? Maybe we'll talk about this after the break. I'll come back. Not fair to say we're going to take a break and then I start talking.
Take a break. Take a break.
Okay.
I'll be here while he takes a break. So for those of you that plan to join us on Saturday, you will get your certificate that day and the physical copies of the, they're not stickers, they're like decals for your vehicle. So yay, join us on Saturday.
Hey, Brenda. Oh, I'm like, what was that? Okay, that's the sun. I see a shadow. I'm like, that's kind of cool. What is that? I wanted to find out from you. I know we kind of spoke about this before, but what the new date is going to be for the next cohort. I can't hear you.
I have it November 9th.
November 9th.
Is the first day, and it's going to be on the same schedule, Tuesday, Friday.
Tuesday and Friday. Okay, November 9th. All right. Are you accepting how does it work? You accept applications?
So we have like over 900 people trying to get into the program, and there's only like 30 spots.
Wow.
I know. So I go through and I, number one, make sure that they serve LADWP customers, that they are somehow in the industry as an educator, designer, contractor, actual, gardener, etc. So they have to be in the industry somehow. And there was one more criteria that I was looking for. At least 50% of the people they serve are LADWP customers. So that was another one. But I mean, and obviously we save some spots for VIPs. So like if you want to be in the next session, which I think you said that you wanted to be, we can get you in, not a problem.
Okay.
And then for Spanish speakers, the criteria number one is you have to be able to take the class in Spanish. That doesn't mean you have to be fluent. It just means that you have to choose Spanish as the language.
Okay, I did forward the information to my gardener. I told him about it, and he was by here yesterday, and I told him about it. And so he said he's definitely interested in taking the course. And
and I would recommend Spanish just because there's a lot less competition.
Right.
As far as, there's not 900 people for the 30 spots. I think right now we have 20 people for 30 spots. Okay. So Spanish is the way to go. If he or she has the capacity. We've had a few people go through where Spanish was their second language, and it was fine. It's a lot of visuals. Yeah. And I won't be on vacation, so I'll be there. I'll be there to support in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, that it makes a difference when you have that support. In English, it's not. I would say that English would be easier because everyone here at least speaks English, but not everybody here speaks Spanish.
Right. I sat in with the or managed one of the Spanish speaking trainings. So yeah,
Alejandro's amazing.
he's amazing. He's so nice and friendly.
Yes, very very easygoing. Kind of the way that he teaches. I do a lot of things with my hands. It's everything everywhere all the time.
Right.
It's very kinetic.
Okay. Welcome back, Eric.
Hey, folks.
All right. I'm gonna go back on. I'm gonna turn my screen off.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm here.
Okay. So, yeah, let's look at the chat a little bit. So Nathaniel says, would you agree thinning is the best way to tackle the larger? Nathaniel, are you here? Is Nathaniel in the house?
He's here. I saw him. I saw him somewhere.
All right, I'm gonna, until he responds, I'm not gonna answer his question.
Okay, so there was a question that came as a direct message, and I think they meant to put it in the chat, is why is the round preferred as opposed to why do most landscapers prefer lollipop shaped pruning instead of our more natural growth as you described?
Cultural preferences.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no answer. I mean, the wild look, I mean, a lot of horticulture is about taming nature, right? So it's all about, look what I can do with this thing. Right? Extreme example would be topiary.
Topiaries, yeah. And also, you know, for a lot of people that can afford a gardener, it's kind of a show of wealth when you have the topiaries, because you have this plot of land that you're not using for livestock or for food. So you're going to grow this tree that looks like a triangle.
Right.
Because you have time and or money to pay someone else to do that. Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, honestly, if I went to a classic formal garden, I can appreciate it for what it is. But, you know, I think over the last maybe 100 years or so, we've sort of been moving towards a more natural appearance on plants. And so that's kind of.
Ooh, I got an amen. Did you ever get an amen, Eric? Someone said amen, Brenda. Woo, woo.
We'll get them. So Nathaniel, since you're here, so would you agree thinning is the best way to tackle the larger ceanothus such as Joyce Coulter? It really depends on what your goal is. So you can kind of make a lot of small reduction cuts if you want to create a more of a canopy. But if it's getting into other plants, you want to, I would say it's more of a reduction scenario. If you cut, ceanothus are kind of susceptible. If you cut larger branches, they're susceptible to disease. So without seeing it, you know, and everybody's going to have an opinion, but what is the issue with the ceanothus?
No, that's just how I've been kind of caring for it it's about, I think, 6 years old. And I kind of learned the hard way once, making pruning cuts kind of mid-branch, you know, not deadheading it, but just not going too far enough. And then, you know, the growth was just unnatural.
Yeah.
And now I've found just by trying to manage kind of its character, if I take, you know, and I'm not talking many cuts, but just thinning it here and there, but going back to like a much larger trunk, if not all the way to the trunk, it keeps its appearance. It looks better.
If you have success with that, then I never discourage people who have success in what they're doing. So we have I believe it is a Joyce Coulter. Is it Joyce? Yeah. Anyway, this thing fried, all our Joyce Coulters fried in 115-degree heat last year. And we tried to bring them back and they just, most of them died. We pulled them all out. I mean, we tried to hang on to them as long as possible and then they just gave it up. But there's one, I think I might have pointed it out to a couple of you. So there, it's got two long, it doesn't look like a healthy plant right now, but they're sprouting from the base, oddly. So we're basically gonna coppice this ceanothus, which is not something that people usually do, but I see growth from the base. And how often do you get to try something like that? So we're gonna cut it, see what happens. And we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll have a little story to tell when it's all over. Let's see, topping creates a lot of weak branching at the tip of the stumps. Once a tree is pruned in this fashion, can't go back, says John. True. Yeah, it just, you create a lot of, and the plant just starts to look funny too. Let's see, I've seen leaves fill up the branches of the water sprouts and become a haven for pests and disease. The only way to clean it out was to cut it back hard, which made it look horrible for 6 months or so. Definitely don't recommend for trees. Yeah, so that's when you just mishandle a branch cutting or top the tree. I recently read that it's far preferable to leave the top of a hedge rounded or more natural, as this prevents rain from running into the hedge, which discourages birds from nesting in them. Okay. I always thought it would take a lot less time to use those electric shears than to hand prune. Yeah, you know, it does. It takes longer, it takes less time, but it kind of depends on the plant. I feel like where I've gone through and electric sheared a hedge, and I feel like just this process, you know, sometimes the leaf kind of bounces around in the blade as you're cutting, and it can, it just can beat up the leaves, and then they have this kind of, because they get beat up, they get these little scars on the leaves, and then they crust up, and you don't get as nice a nice clean edge as much. It does take longer to do it with the shears. Okay. Also, reduction cuts are a way to reduce, if you have a tree that's too tall, and you can see this on arborist websites, they talk about reduce. So if you've got a tree, this is the top of the tree, and you've got a couple like things, like here's the leader up here. If you need to get this, if you want to reduce the size of the tree, you're going to cut this leader here back down here. Now, make friends with an arborist and learn from them, you know, but don't learn from the guy doing the hand signals on the Zoom lesson. But I'm just giving you an idea of what a reduction cut would be on a tree. And now you've got this, and that's how you can rather than this. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Okay, pruning season, seasons to prune. Pruning is seasonal depending on the plant type and growing season. So know your plants, know your genus. And, you know, the thing that I get caught up in is feeling like, oh, I have to know all of this stuff. Actually, I mean, it is good, and you develop your knowledge and you develop your intuition about these things, but it's really knowing the plants that you're either installing or you're taking care of. So you don't have to know every plant, and then gradually you learn the genus and the species. You learn when the flowering season is for these plants. And depending on the goals of the garden, you make your choices to satisfy that. Let's see. Yeah, it's dictated. Pruning season is dictated by objective. Yeah, you want habitat, you leave the seed heads up longer, then you cut them back before. So like our salvias, now we've left them up all summer. Let the birds have at it all summer. And now's the time we're going to start cutting those back. All right. Clicking. Ground cover. As with all pruning, depends on species. Generally after flowering or prior to vegetative growth, edging can occur whenever you need to clean up the paths. So yeah, so for instance, the Baccharis pigeon point is in bloom right now. But since we're going to edge it, we're going to selectively, I guess that would be a reduction. That would technically be a reduction cut. You know, I don't think about these terms a lot, but you understand what the goal is. So cutting back underneath the plant to hide the cut and let the top layer fold over, that would be a reduction cut. But it's just on the ground. It's not up in the air. But it's in bloom, but we need to get it out of the driveway. So and then our buckwheat, our big, crazy, grandiose buckwheat by the bathroom, it might be time to cut that back this year, probably by about a third or a half. It's still going to be gigantic. And if we really wanted to, we could coppice it and it would come back and be a little more tidy looking. But that plant, I don't even know how old it is. Brenda, do you have any idea how old it is?
That's the one that's right outside by the restrooms.
Yeah.
I can go look. I think it has a date. I would say it's at least 10 years old.
Yeah.
Let's
And I
make
don't know.
bets.
Yeah.
Let's make bets. Who's got Monopoly money?
Don't bet against Brenda.
But now I'm gonna go check it out right now and I'll let you know.
Oh. Okay. So yeah. So after flowering, that's generally your goal on most, you know, your ceanothus. If you're going to cut that back, it's after flowering. I just clicked twice. It's not. See? Okay, conifers, any time of year, you can shape after the new needles harden off. That means when you pull them, like a group of them come out. I don't have a lot of experience with trimming conifers. Generally, one thing I know is that it's generally better to trim them in the winter because the sap doesn't run as much out of them. And then they don't like touching other plants or they'll get some dieback on that branch. So be careful about that. Semi-evergreen species. Okay, this also sometimes confuses me. We got the semi-evergreen, we got the evergreens, we got the deciduous. Sometimes I have trouble remembering what they all do. So again, knowing where to get the information is really important. So on a semi-evergreen species, I don't know if I'd call a Matilaha poppy semi-evergreen. I guess it doesn't go completely dormant is what it's saying. So you cut those back when they're in the period of slowest growth. So right now is when we're cutting our Matilaha poppy. I think a lot of people would cut them back before then. One danger of cutting back too early is you can get fresh growth that then will not be able to handle the summer. If you're cutting kind of midsummer, you might stimulate growth depending. And that's why you don't want to, oh, this actually pertains more to coppicing. So you don't want to coppice too early. You want to coppice right before the growth period. And then, sorry, should have said this during coppicing. You want to coppice right before the growth period. And some people recommend that you use a little light compost, or people that I think know what they're talking about. We don't do that at Theodore Payne, but it's not unheard of. I've seen it in a couple places. A little light compost on your coppiced woody shrub, but not a heavy, like a fertilizer or anything like that. Just give it a little food. So semi-evergreen species, again, keep an eye on them. And then your monkey flowers, we're heading into the growing season. So now's the time you want to shape up that monkey flower. Your Artemisia, good time to trim it up and shape it up for the winter. Let's see. Evergreens, herbaceous perennials, and shrubs. So shape after flowering, rejuvenate in the fall. So rejuvenate would be more like a coppicing thing rather than okay, we're looking at a toy on here. Here's a list of plants that they're kind of talking about here. Coast aster, lilac verbena, coffeeberry, toyon, coyote brush. All of these, manzanita, very specialized manzanita. But toyon, here we see the berries. If we were to look up when toyon, it's called the Christmas berry because the berries come around Christmas time. So if you were to have a hedge or a small shrub, in the fall would not be the time that you want to shear it. You don't want to shear off all the buds for the berries. So that's something to keep in mind, right? Knowing the plant, very important. And why you're doing it. If you've got a completely unmanageable toyon in your garden and you're just like, this thing is out of hand, I want to refresh it, then the fall is the right time to do it. Evergreens, herbaceous perennials, and shrubs. Difference. Okay, so here we have, let's see, did I miss anything? Here we have two Salvia clevelandii, same plant, either side of the stairs as you enter Theodore Payne. On the right, that one was untouched last year. On the left, that one was shaped up. And we can see there's a pretty good size difference between the two. The left looks a little tidier. The wild one on the right, depending on your aesthetics, right? Let's see. This year we're going to cut them both back, but this was done in the fall, and this is just when we shear, I'm going to shear this back with a pair of shears. I'm going to look for the growth inside the plant. I'm not just going to go at this thing and cut it down to the size I want. I'm going to cut it down to the size I think the plant can handle. And that's anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2. And I'm going to make sure there's some green growth left on that plant when I cut it back. When I mentioned why are Salvia clevelandii not on the coppicing list? Tim, our director of horticulture, is like, well, you never know. You know, he's like, plants surprise you sometimes. So I wouldn't take a chance on coppicing this plant, but he's kind of like, even Carol Bornstein, who wrote the Bible along with other people, says that you never really know what's going on in the soil down below with the roots, all of that, what this plant can do if you coppice it back. It's not that you want to go experimenting, but sometimes, like I said, with that Joyce Coulter, we'll see what happens. But this plant, if I'm on a more sort of standard pruning, I need to cut this thing back, I'm going to go back about 1/3 to 1/2 as a general rule. Emilio, you have a question?
I have a suggestion for you. Because I like the example, you know, I think that it's very valuable to come in and be able to see the difference in how plants have been treated. I want to suggest that why not prune the one on the right now and then leave the one on the left that was pruned last year to grow and go crazy. And that way, you know, you have you're keeping them both in order.
Yeah. It's an interesting suggestion. I think when you do things like this, like we probably should have put a sign out. Hey, this is what happens when you can prune this one and then leave this one alone. You know, it's, to me, that's the education, right? Why do these two things look so different? It also could be, there could be shade issues, like cultural stuff going on that can change the way plants look, the same plants. So yeah, interesting. That could happen, Emilio. Absolutely. Okay. Flowering perennials. Generally after first flush of flowers, variable by location and species, bush poppy, island snapdragon, penstemons, California fuchsia. Yeah, so again, sometimes you can get a regrowth or a second bloom on some of these flowering perennials. And just when those first flowers start dying, then you can head them back, get a little more, get that energy going again, and you can get a second bloom sometimes. Yeah. So what not to do? Let's not make excessive heading cuts. This will cause plants to be weak, like what John was talking about. Don't prune right before flowering. This will result in loss of flowers. I think I've said that more than once. Repeatedly prune for size control. This is better managed by replacing with smaller variety. So I guess they're saying, here's a Joyce Coulter sheared during bloom. The plant is too big for the spot and likely overwatered as well. You can see, you can sort of see, I have a really big monitor, but underneath, it was reported that it was just dankly wet down there. So that's something to keep in mind. And then just the way you can see all the dead material up here. And then it's not a shrub that looks like something you'd want in your garden. And it's interesting. They just said, get this thing down. It could have been a sightline thing. It's hard to say why. And then they lost all the beautiful blooms. So you want to get the shearing done. You know, usually shearing on a hedge, you'd have to do more than once a year anyway. So it'd be hard to time it with a ceanothus, I think. But that's just an example of, you know, don't shear it so that you lose all the great benefit of the plant. Here is it's called a columnar monstrosity. This is a Salvia clevelandii. I think this is what they're saying here is this is a plant that is too big for the space. It's very close to the, I think that's a driveway, and it's close to the other plants. They tried to keep some of the top growth. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how this thing grows out. I think if I were shearing this plant, I would have just made a nice ball out of it and tried to rejuvenate it that way. Yeah. Anyway, it's again, I'd like to see, I want to see what happens with this, you know. If anybody drives by the Eagle Rock City Hall, they have a beautiful native plant garden, and there was a fair amount of heavy shearing going on this summer. And so it'll be interesting to see how some of those, they've got an Encelia farinosa that's like 6 feet tall. It's crazy. That would be, to me, an example of you could coppice that and it would recover and look better than what it looks like right now. They had to shear it similar to this to keep it out of the walk path. So. There we go. Okay, we're not going to do this. I mean, this becomes like, what are you going to do? It's hard to identify the plants here. So I'd rather not get into it. Okay, your tools. I think at some point, yeah, we'll get the tools closer to the pruning techniques so that you know the proper tools for the various pruning techniques. There are dimensions that they recommend. So this is what they call a bypass pruner. These are for your smaller stems. And then there's also one called an anvil pruner, which I've never seen anybody use. So it's kind of like a wire cutter on a pliers, where they're not actually slicing, you're smashing the plant, the stem. And it's okay for dried twigs and things like that, but it would be harder, and stiff branches perhaps, but generally, like I said, I've never seen anybody really use it. And then you want to keep your tools sharp, so you're doing less squeezing, less sort of tearing. We've had that experience where you try to cut something and maybe the tool slides off, or somehow the stem fits in between the blades. So you want to keep it sharp, keep your tool. And so there is a sharpening tool. Just watch a little video on how to sharpen your tools occasionally. You want to keep them clean. Get the dirt, debris, and resin off of the tool. And then let's see. Yeah, there's pretty specific dimensions they talk about. So the hand pruners for branches 1/4 inch or smaller. 1/4 inch. Can you see that? Put your measuring stick up. That's 1/4 inch. Loppers for branches up to 3/4 inches. Of course, loppers come in different sizes, so that varies. Hedging shears for shearing, pruning saw for branches larger than 3/4. String trimmer for your edging and deadheading, unless you're doing it for a more natural effect, right? Pole pruner for high branches that are not near power lines. I don't like how this thing makes me wait. Bleach, of course, they're showing you the thing that's going to damage your tools. The bleach will cause little rust spots and eat away at your tools over time. So to keep your tools clean, try Lysol, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide 3%. any one of those will keep your, so that you're not transferring. If you're cutting diseased branches, even on the same plant, you're going to wipe down in between cuts, so you don't take that fungal issue over to another branch by accident. Yeah, that's one of the main things. Then you wipe, and then if you're working on a clean plant, it's good to wipe down in between plants. You can keep a rag. Sometimes I just keep I keep a cup of alcohol with me at all times, and I dip my pruners in the alcohol and just kind of wipe them off. So there we go. Okay. Okay, here we're going to take a little trip through Home Depot. Bypass pruners, head shears, and loppers. Handsaw, long-armed pruners. This is like a thing that I would read to my child at bedtime. Look, dear, it's a long-arm pruner. Those long-arm pruners are kind of handy, but they're good for really small branches. They don't really have the torque you need to cut the branches to do that, like thinning and stuff, but they can be kind of useful. And what's nice is they grab and hold the piece that you just cut. You pull it out. You can also pull other people's beer bottles out of your garden with that, off your parking strip. Oh, a machete. Awesome. Look, kids, pole saw pruner. I'm telling you, this is like Sam's Christmas word book. A machete. Hey, kids. Hula hoe, collinear hoe, and standard hoe. So they don't really show you the diamond hoe. But that's basically what this collinear hoe is. And then the hula hoe. Those are great for getting things out of your pathways. Those various erigerons showing, or not erigeron, epilobiums showing up in your DG. Rakes. Wow, you guys know what rakes are. We're going to move on. Spade, trenching shovel. So those shovels are super good, not just for trenches, but for digging little 1-gallon holes and 5-gallon holes in your garden. Sometimes I find these big shovels, they dig too big of a hole. You can also use a post hole digger if you really want to. Square shovel, awesome. Matic, pick. A hori hori, have the best name of all. It's got a blade. I use it for digging holes to put gopher traps in there. If anybody uses a hori hori on a regular, tell us all about it. Start in the chat and we'll pick it up as we go. Whoa, a chainsaw. Yes, string trimmer. I think we all know what these things are. Power pole chainsaw. Yeah, those. Electric leaf blower. Highly recommend the electric leaf blower. I use it. It's great for cleaning up, although you can, it's usually people that don't have to do a lot of cleanup that don't like the leaf blowers. The people that have to do a lot of cleanup, we like the leaf blowers because it makes those piles really quick, and raking in the hot sun, it's hard, man. It wears you out. Here's your soil probe. Remember we were talking about those. The one we have has a little pogo stick foot thing here. And then these have little these irrigation tools have little screwdrivers at the end and stuff. Okay, the dram watering nozzle is a nice way to apply a nice even water. It's kind of the go-to in the nursery for watering 1-gallon plants, and it puts out a gentle, nice, broad stream of water. So you're not like blasting it with a blowtorch of water, digging holes in your ground. Okay, putting it all together. Interesting. Okay. So weird that, we all know what rakes are. Anybody use a hori on the regular?
Yes.
Well, how do you use it?
I use it to pull weeds and sometimes to dig little holes, like for the 4-inch plants.
There you go. Yeah.
Mhm. And to cut down smaller branches if I need to.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, pulling weeds with a tool, we all know that helps. They're not showing my Cobra. I love my Cobra head tool. You guys haven't tried that thing out.
Those are fun.
Super useful. Yeah.
They didn't show the big, the muck shovels, because those were great for mulch.
Picking up leaves, all of
Mhm.
that, right? Oh, wait.
When you get back, Eric, for Saturday, are students going to have a chance to bring their own tools? Can you even hear me?
We can hear you.
No, I want Eric to hear me because I have a question. So if you
What's
haven't
up?
already, for Saturday, should students bring their own tools, or will we be using the variety of what
Yes,
we have?
please bring some bypass pruners. And
Alcohol.
yeah,
wipes.
I haven't really, I mean, it's not, we're gonna have a hard time all getting in there and doing work, but it's more to get the experience if you haven't done it. And then, yeah, we'll talk. I think bypass pruners are the main thing. I'll show you a couple cuts, like we need to make a cut, remove some branches on oak tree. We might not do that but I'll show you where the cuts would be. But I might not do it with the chainsaw because it's so loud and everything. But yeah, bring the bypass pruners. We'll take it from there. How about that?
Yeah, and they'll also have a chance to go into the sales yard and get that little stone to clean and sharpen.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So manzanita. So this is what we're talking about. So know the genus Arctostophilus, right? And then the flowering season, if you take the whole genus, it runs from like December through March, I think, but an individual plant. And then here's the other thing. Plants can flower at different times in different gardens. So it's a guideline, but it's not the God's truth, like you can see poppies out in Claremont much earlier than you do in Sunland. That's just an example of the different, you can see the, I believe it's, what is it? Certain kinds of ceanothus out there blooming before they bloom in LA. So it's a guideline, keep that in mind. But what you're looking for is it flowers, and then you start making your decisions. So reason to prune: aesthetic, shape, reveal branches. Season: early spring before new flower buds form. So right, technique: tip pinch, reduction. Special considerations: prune when it's hot and dry to limit spread of diseases. So you can remove dead wood anytime. Keep that in mind. Avoid watering after you make those prune. So if it's going to rain, don't make the pruning cuts. Let keep an eye on the calendar, and then let it, if it's rare that we have this successive rain. So I would let it dry out for a week at least, before I would want to do it at least a week before a rainstorm, if not more. If I'm trying to squeeze it in, maybe I'm doing it at the wrong time. Okay, so and it might just be worth waiting. So if you got a piece of dead wood that's bothering you, but it's raining, just let it sit and do it when it's safer for the plant. So these, you're gonna wait until it's like springtime, after the flowers have gone, then you can do your tip pinching, your cutting back, and your shaping for these plants. You can do, if you feel like you need to thin out this plant, so that would be a like a thinning. You would do that. You can do that in the summer anytime, because you're taking off that branch and you're not expecting it to flower anyway. So you're just removing it, taking it out of the plant altogether. Let's see. Any questions about manzanita? This looks diseased back here. Look at that. Let's get on that IPM website and see what's happening. Something's going on there. Waiting for, sorry folks, waiting for the slide to change.
Is that rust back there?
I don't know. That's why I would use the IPM website to go through and determine. Use that diagnostic tool. Ceanothus, reason to prune, aesthetic, shape, hedge, edge. After flowering, once again, it's like after flowering is really one of our main guides. And then know the plant. Technique, tip pinch to remove old flower clusters, shear to hedge, right? Special considerations, do not cut into branches larger around than a pencil to avoid fungal infection. So that's a general rule. Sometimes you just got to do it, I think, you know, but then if you have to do it, then do it at a time when it's the healthiest for the plant. So not in the wet season. Salvias. Hey, reason to prune, health, shape to avoid crown splitting. So yeah, so when those Clevelandii get really, really big, they can just break wide open. And if you've gone on hikes and you've just seen wild Clevelandii, you've probably seen this where branches just get too big and they'll split out. So I really recommend on most salvias that, like in my own garden, I cut them back every year by a third. That's just a given. It's like, and the time to do it, you know, I actually deadhead them in the summer after I'm, you know, I feel like all the seeds and everything have done their thing. But I do it every year so that they don't get out of hand, hopefully. Although Clevelandii can grow extremely large, even in one season. Later summer and winter. Techniques, tip pinching, deadheading, heading back. So you're going to do that tip pinching to create a bigger canopy and discourage those kind of like really long branches that will possibly could it can also happen on the white sage, Salvia apiana. Consideration, ground covers can be edged. Yeah, again, I would use shears and do it to keep a more natural edge. I think it takes so long to react because I'm either using Zoom and this thing, and I'm using online Office. So I think that's why it takes so long to switch. Additional opportunities. So annual tree pruning, note the large trees on each property and make a proposal to your clients to do annual cleanup and pruning. Hire a subcontractor who is qualified and insured to do this work. If you are not, use healthy practices like clean pruning shears, responsible waste removal, and pruning outside of bird nesting season. Yes, so bird nesting season, It's what, February through August usually. And so if you're making cuts, thinning cuts, you want to look, always look, and make sure you're not disturbing the birds. And we talked about the responsible waste removal. That would be something you'd want to talk to your arborist about if they're pruning a diseased tree, and make sure that I personally would want them to handle it responsibly. And I don't know all the ins and outs about how much they can transport and things like that. So, but we did talk about keeping that on site. That is really the best practice. Consider offering annual fire zone modification. We talked a little bit about that, clearing and pruning according to each client's local regulations and restrictions. If you don't do it, maintenance crews subcontracted by the local fire agency will do it, and in ways that don't add to the health and beauty of the client's property. Yeah, they're just gonna, it's kind of like although I have to say our tree trimmers for the city do a great job. They seem, maybe they've had so many complaints, but they've done great job on some of the trees on our street that are heading into the power lines. But I was going to compare these crews. They just have to clear the area. They got no time to sit there and make the tree look good, make the shrub look good. So keep that in mind. The other thing I would say is also, I assume that if you're creating a garden for somebody, you're also creating a maintenance plan for them. And this would be something that, so each plant would have a maintenance schedule, I assume, tied to it. And I don't know if that's in the package or just how you, does anybody, so you experienced designers that do this? Meryl, I see you edging towards your computer. Do you create a maintenance schedule for your clients?
We absolutely do. We do 3 months of weekly maintenance because we find that a lot of weeds will pop up right away. And then we do 3 months of like maybe 2 times a month, and then kind of see where they are. We always like to hand off to not mow and blow guys, but like a gardener who maybe doesn't have experience with natives, because we want to encourage like the whole gardening ecosystem to just be shifting away from tropicals and toward natives. So our opinion is the more they're exposed to it, the better. So after that, like when they're working on it, then we try to do annual service and let the owner know where their mow and blow guy could be improving, or things that he's doing incorrectly, or him or her are doing incorrectly, and hopefully try to course correct that way. Some people have us stay on, but it is nice to have even those mow and blow guys like come and just sweep the hardscape and stuff like that if they're in the neighborhood. Might as well.
Yeah.
I don't like taking work away from anybody.
Well, you'd be surprised how just cleaning up the leaves, it makes people feel good about their property. You know, leaves on, let's say, hardscape and stuff. Maggie, how about you?
I give a lot of information about pruning, but right now I've only been doing design, and I hand the installation off to other people that I recommend. And so some of them I know do offer maintenance also. Right. So I have not been involved in directly doing maintenance. I only do design.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, it would,
it's definitely not ideal because I have to rely on the people that are doing the installation to offer the right kind of maintenance. And sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And it depends on their familiarity with the plants, right?
Right. And some of them are very good with, I mean, I've had people who, you know, from Theodore Payne, who taught classes at Theodore Payne, do installations. And so of course I trust them.
Yeah.
And others, I sort of have developed a relationship with who don't have a specialty in natives, but there's a lot of information sharing back and forth.
Right. Okay, anybody else?
Yes, right here.
Uh-huh.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I just have to say that I'm just really honored to be around this group of landscapers and designers. I struggle with the maintenance plan. I'm a client and I've had 4 or 5 different landscapers, and I've never had a successful maintenance plan, and we've done large projects with DWP money. So I hope I can meet some of you this weekend. Maybe talk about bringing someone on to help us with the actual guide.
Yeah, and you knowing about the plants can help you. I mean, you learn a lot if you created a maintenance plan for your whatever garden you're dealing with. Yeah, you'd be surprised how much you learn. You might not feel confident in telling people what to do, but at least you kind of have a good idea about guidance and things like that.
Right. I've learned so much, and 3 other people in my community are taking this course. So the Spanish version. So we are at least we have some knowledge behind us now.
Yeah. Just quickly getting into the, so somebody asked if spraying alcohol or whatever. Yeah, you can spray is fine for your tools. And
Spray and wipe, right? Spray and wipe.
Yeah. And then let's see. Gas blowers, yeah, really bad for people in general. Hand sickle, yeah, no kidding. So Brenda says, here in California, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife biologists define the nesting season as February 1st through August 15th. So again, you know, and it might even be a thing of you observe, you're kind of paying attention to this plant before, it might even be a year before you're cutting it, you know, just as being a human being who's paying attention to what's going in the garden. I'm not saying you have to scope it out and make a plan next year. Just saying kind of being aware of what's happening might make sense, and knowing, oh, that plant actually gets nests, so I've got to be careful with that one. All right, so I think, oh shoot, check this out, guys. You're gonna love this. This is actually, this is gonna be great. We have a video. So my favorite thing, but this is a handy little, if you haven't done much pruning, it's actually a nice little quick touch base on how to prune properly. So we're going to go here. Hold on. Already I'm not doing it. No. I swear, I'm going to have my kids, they're going to be the ones coming over to my house to program. Nope. What's this? Here it is. Okay. Yeah, my kids are going to come over to, like, you can't even say message machine or VCR anymore. So I don't know what they're going to be programming, but they're going to be programming my stuff for me when I get older, for sure. So here's the video. Enjoy.
Plants that are appropriate to our climate and use less water will help your client save money. One of the most important things to remember while maintaining these beautiful, sustainable gardens is to properly prune the plants in the yard. Some people don't know that every cut makes a wound, and plants don't heal. They must seal over the wound. So you should always have a good reason for each cut. Remember, the first reason to prune or trim a plant is to keep it healthy. Here are some reasons you may want to remove a branch. When they're dead, look for branches with dead leaves or shriveled blackened buds. To check, scrape the bark to see if it's green underneath. If it's brown, you know the branch is dead. When there is disease, look for sunken areas that are oozing or discolored along branches or trunks. If they are, prune the diseased branch back to at least 6 inches below the diseased area into healthy wood if possible. When there is damage, if there are broken branches, make a clean cut to a bud on a young stem, to another branch, or remove the branch entirely. When they're deranged, this includes branches that are rubbing against each other or the trunk. You'll need to choose one to keep and prune the others out. Don't forget, never leave a stub. When this happens, the plants sprout weak branches called water sprouts, creating crowded branches, unhealthy plants, and more work for you. Here are some tips to avoid this. Remove whole branches all the way back to the bulge at the base of the branch. This prevents water sprouts and enables the plant to seal over the wound. If you must shorten a branch, prune it back to another branch that is at least 1/3 the thickness of the part being removed. On young 1-year-old branches, you can shorten them by cutting them to an outward-facing bud or back to another branch. Lastly, never prune trees or shrubs into balls or other shapes. This creates lots of stubs, lots of work, and is harmful to plants. This kind of thoughtful pruning maintenance will grow healthy, thriving plants. Thank you for maintaining sustainable gardens.
Okay, escape. I'm gonna get rid of that one, or else the golf commercial is gonna come on. Okay, something I forgot about, but I can't let you guys leave without me talking about. Sorry, I thought we were gonna get out of here, but I remembered about this. This on page, it starts on what? Well, it's in chapter, it's under pruning. The pruning guide in here, the list of plants, this is gold. Okay, this is like an encyclopedia of various plants, quick descriptions of them, talks about whether they're dormant in the summer. So let's just pick one. I think they're using, on page 113, we can talk about the Arctostophilus. So that's 2 plants down. And I'll explain how this works. So this sort of collection of knowledge, you can't find this anywhere. So this is, you're going to want to hold on to this. So are most people, did you find Arctostophilus? Great. Okay. So, somebody needs glasses. So each plant kind of actually goes across 4 pages. So it's like a spreadsheet that was put into just book form, and I'll show you how it works. So your Arctostophilus, which is a manzanita, you go to the right, common species and cultivars, many, right? Common name, manzanita. Here you go. Some quick maintenance thoughts. Thin branches to create an open look, or tip frequently in year 1 through 5 for a dense hedge. Manzanitas periodically get galls in the summer, which typically fall off by themselves by fall. Galls, most people just don't worry about them. Okay, don't panic. By summer, manzanitas have usually already set buds for next year's winter flowers. So the time you're pruning for spring, after they've flowered and set berries, but before they set next year's buds. Small dead twigs are common and should be removed in early summer to improve appearance. Disinfect shears between cuts if pruning off dead or diseased woods. And then as we move across pruning season, spring, summer, right? What is it? It's evergreen. Summer dormant? Nope. Winter dormant? Nope. Flip the page. Go up to the, flip the book, you go up. And we're back at the genus. And then it picks up with works well with LADWP irrigation regulations. No, it doesn't have an X. So an X means that's good. So it doesn't necessarily work with those. Preferred plant for swales? No, right? Because manzanitas, they don't want a lot of water. Preferred mulch type. So, you know, it just goes through replacement value interval in years. So, so sometimes you have a plant. So that basically, if you have a plant, a full grown manzanita, it could take you 20 years to find it, to put the same plant in and get the same growth out of it. So that's kind of interesting. And then if you look right down below, like an Artemisia, 3 to 5 years. I think that's a stretch. You can get an Artemisia to grow pretty quick. Anyway, moving on. Difficult to establish? Yes. Flowering season, winter to spring. Summer H2O, low. And I haven't confirmed this with Tim, but I bet that correlates very closely to the WUCOLS rating, if you were to look it up. Early tip pinching, yes. Thinning, yes. Deadheading, maybe not. So, and then it goes all the way through. You can hedge it. You know, can you hedge it? Yes. Coppicing, no, but interestingly enough, some manzanita can handle coppicing. But that would be a deep dive on your part to find out which ones. Glandulosa. So you can just move through here. And then the last page is about a half a page. Okay. Can suffer from sudden oak death if the all 3 pieces of the triangle are in effect, right? So it starts off, I guess they go alphabetically. Starts with your annuals. The first page starts with annuals, and then it moves alphabetically through the plant types, not the genuses. So you go annual, cactus, then into grass, ground covers, perennials, so shrubs, trees like that. So this is a way that you can develop that plan, even if you you can start looking up information about the plants on your property, or you know, if you're just starting out on designing, you can develop that knowledge on your maintenance for the plants you're designing for. So yeah, that's it. And I don't think there's any homework this week. Let's see. Let me just scoot through here. Homework, yeah. Okay, so let me share this. There is homework. Super easy. Share.
Is the homework to make a maintenance plan?
Man, that would be good. That would take some time. Pick a plant. So sort the flashcards into groups with similar pruning needs. So that's one thought. You can sort them in all kinds of ways. But the pruning needs, I don't think, are necessarily written on the flashcards. So you'd have to do a little research about the season. So you could say like, oh, these cards are done in this season. These cards are done in this season. Or this is a coppicing plant. This is sort of a deadheading plant, stuff like that. Or So that's just, what are you going to send me a picture of all the plants that you did? Or I would say assess a native plant, determine the best course of pruning given its condition and aesthetic. So challenge yourself a little bit, maybe not something that you're super familiar with, but something that puzzles you. You're not sure what to do with this. I think you're going to learn a lot more. At least you'll learn about that plant rather than just picking something that you do every year. Yeah. So, lastly, there are a few resources. One, if you ever see this book around, it's called Care and Maintenance of Southern California Native Plant Gardens. Any of you know this? Boom. Whoops. Wow, that's interesting. Oh, because of the green screen. Well, anyway, that's the title.
Yeah, hold it at an angle.
Like an angle. Oh, there.
Meryl is holding it up.
Thank you, Meryl. Yeah, that's it. If you find that at somebody's garage sale, buy it. Okay, that's what I recommend. It has some just more information. Also has some kind of like, it talks about rototilling. So generally people aren't rototilling as much as they used to. And then I kind of like this book for a little casual reading, but it can also guide you about it's called California Native Gardening, a month-by-month guide by Helen Popper. Look at that. There it is. Looks like that. And it goes through, starts in November. No, actually starts in October. And starts talking about what you should be planning on doing. And each month has a pruning section in it. So that's a little more casual, a little less regimented, but she's experienced and she has a lot of good stuff to say. So that's it. I'm going to let you guys roll. And then thanks.
Eric, there's a few questions in the chat.
Okay, questions. Yes.
A question about the Louis Edmonds Manzanita in stock.
I know, Holly, $844 on Amazon. That is crazy. So the Louis Edmonds, where are we? When will Theodore Payne have a Louis Edmonds Manzanita back? So one, you can check online, or you can go to Buy Plants online store, and you can get our inventory there. Type in the plant you want and then the size, and it will show up and tell you how many we have.
Okay. Yeah, I've been, and I have one and I need another, and every time I go I'm like disappointed.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, we're having a big sale coming up end of this month. We're stocking the yard like demons, so just keep an eye out.
Can you grow manzanitas from cuttings?
Yes, you can.
Well, there you go. You have an unlimited supply if you have one.
Yeah,
But the one I have is a little baby I got from you guys like maybe a year ago, and it hasn't grown much.
Sit tight.
Yeah.
And come get another one. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have them for sure.
Thank you.
Lots of cool stuff pops up for the sales.
Yeah. Yeah, and that place is gonna be packed. Let's see. Found a Zoom online, California Native Gardening month by month, a talk by Helen Popper. That's right. Check it out. I think that's a CNPS thing. She does a nice little talk there. So anything else? Or I'll say Ambigua always has me guessing. Any suggestions? So that'll take some summer water. You can coppice that. I would look it up just to double check about when the best time is. But yeah, generally mallows like that, you can coppice to the ground. See, so here's your genus, and most mallows, you can just whack them down to the ground and they'll come right back.
Is that how they're handled at the nursery at Theodore Payne?
Yeah, so we only have a couple that I'm aware of, and they just get brutalized at a certain point in the year. And then they come back with the rains as the rains come. So in fall or when they look really crusty, and we even had one that it looked like it was time to cut it back, and because I irrigated, and it just came back fresh. So they're, you know, it's a mallow. They're pretty easy to take care of it with, and if they're not looking their best, cut them back, you know, to like 6 inches or something. You'll get a nice even growth back in the spring. Okay. And then use your handy dandy guide just to verify. Okay, anybody else? Questions? That looks good. Okay, everybody go home or step away from your computer and enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Brenda, Eric, Anjali, anything we need to cover, or are we good?
I'm sure.
You didn't ask me about my picture in the background.
It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, what is it? What do we have here?
What do we have here? We have slurry. It's a fire retardant. Then at the bottom, you should be able to see a water hose. So that's a hose lake. And then these are all trees from the Trinity Forest, Klamath Trinity National Forest at one of the fire zones.
Oh, wow. So
My father-in-law's cabin, he had a cabin he built himself. It was really nice. It burned.
He was one of the 94 structures that were lost.
He was in Coffee Creek area.
Oh, I have pictures of Coffee Creek. You want to see what Coffee Creek looks like?
No.
Okay. It was really, yeah. So this was just going up towards Coffee Creek. I have one picture of Coffee Creek, and I'm really sad to hear, because Coffee Creek was one of the ones that 94 structures burned.
Yeah. It's sad to me, because the guy, you know, he just built this whole thing on his own and had it for 30 something years. Yeah.
There you go. That's what's left.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. That's what happens. Well, that's also what happens when you have structures in the middle of places that burn.
Yeah, and so this is the creek itself, and with the riparian area, and then in the back, you can see the burn.
Oh,
burn
yeah.
scar.
Yeah. He was right by the creek.
Yeah, a lot of those houses were red tagged, and I have pictures, but we can't share them until the full investigation has been completed.
Well, that's where you were, huh?
That's where I was.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I would have checked on your dad's cabin.
I had no idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Eric.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. Okay.
right.
I'm gonna go. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night,
Have a good
everyone.
one.
Good night.
Okay, good night.